Welcome to this week's Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. These hangouts are brought to you by the Beyond Bitcoin crew. We encourage everyone to freely share these recordings and to help spread the knowledge and benefits of our DPost 2.0 blockchain technology that we all call BitShares. While listening to this recording, please feel free to visit our website, beyondbitcoin.org, and be sure to stay tuned in for some additional information at the end of the recording. As always, we would like to say thank you, and we appreciate your support. So please continue to vote for our delegate or worker contract so we may continue providing these valuable services to our community members. So once again, welcome, and please enjoy this week's Hangout.
Welcome everybody to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. Today is Friday, October 23rd. Graphene has been launched for approximately 10 days now. Bytemaster is here to give updates on probably a slew of chaotic things going on in the background and answer as many questions from the community as possible. I ask that you please allow him to give his updates first, and then we'll move on to community questions. If you would like to speak up at any point in time during community questions, feel free to do so. You can do so vocally, or you can type a message into the conference room channel in the bottom left-hand corner of the client. If no one has any other questions, feel free to get started, Bytemaster.
Thank you, Fuzzy. All right, it's been another week. The network has been stable, despite a few small changes and an upgrade of the witnesses. Thank you very much for all the witnesses who have come on board. We've got 31 of them now, none of them the init witnesses. So we are currently not running any nodes here at Cryptonomex that are witness nodes. So this is entirely run by the community right now. There have been a lot of issues that have come up in the past week, a lot of debates over the transaction fees. I'm kind of curious why we didn't debate this for the past 3 months, but now that the network's here, it seems like it's on the top of everyone's mind. Then there's issues regarding licensing that people would like us to discuss, so we'll discuss that today. And I want to talk about just a brief summary of the hard fork that took place. I guess it's more of a soft fork that took place this morning. So we discovered that we failed to implement the asset parent-child relationship in Graphene. So if you're the owner of asset trade, you get to register only the issuer of asset trade can create symbols trade.xyz. And we weren't enforcing that. That is something that BitShares 1 was doing. We meant to have that in here, but that apparently slipped through the cracks. So once we discovered that potential vulnerability, we raised the fee of issuing assets to something like $20,000, put together a soft fork that would enforce that extra constraint. It was a witness-only upgrade. The witnesses have since upgraded and the network is still in sync. We will be lowering the fee back down to something reasonable later today, and the network can resume there. So the other thing we did is we reduced the minimum name length from 3 characters to 1 character because that's what BitShares had in the beginning. Graphene had a slightly tighter constraint. So the witnesses made those small changes as a witness decision because they represent bugs, not a change in the consensus. We intended to have those rules in the beginning, and we've had them in BitShares for the past year. So we just went ahead and rolled that out. I'd say that's the overall summary. I've been very pleased with how stable the network's been. The network's generated almost 1 million BitShares in fees, reduction in supply in the first 10 days. That's a really good start. That's from transaction fees and the like. I guess that's all I have on that particular topic. So we can start addressing some of the issues that people have asked me to talk about. First issue is the licensing. I'm sure that 99% of you haven't looked at the license, but the few that have voiced some concerns, and I'd like to explain the license and open up some discussion about the best way to proceed forward. So the license in question has to do with the user interface in the wallet, which has a single clause in it. Let me actually read the clause. Okay. So any source or binaries are for single user use only and may not be used to deploy a multi-user website. So some people have expressed concern that that's us changing the rules or changing what we said. And I think we can go back and review past Mumble sessions and verify that we haven't actually changed our stance on this. And our stance has always been that the wallet would be available for anyone who wants to run it on their own, wants to use it for their use. But if you want to be someone like Open Ledger, then you've got to get a separate license from us. And that was going to be how Cryptonomex monetized all the money we've invested into building this wallet. So if we allow it to be completely open source, then there's no reason for multi-user websites like Open Ledger or banks or what data security node's working on. There's no reason for them to get a license from us at all. And Cryptonomex has no business model. So that's what we were trying to do. But we also recognize that to the extent that there's a barrier to entry, it prevents developers from taking the work we've done and building on it and deploying it on their own website or doing whatever it is they want to do with it. I think a lot of this can be solved by working with the community. Anyone who creates improvements on the wallet, we are more than happy to incorporate into the wallet, more than happy to include in the light wallet, like anyone can use and download free of charge. And if you want to deploy your own website and attract users to it and try to monetize it, then we're more than happy to work with you. And we don't charge anything up front for using it. You know, all we really ask for is a cut of any referral income that is generated from the site you build and deploy. So that's the model that we've had. That's the model we've been discussing since we originally announced Graphene months ago. If there are concerns about it, I guess now is the time to express it and also to make recommendations on how to resolve the issues to make sure that all parties involved have financial incentive to contribute.
In your estimation, what would be the time involved and developer resources for a company or a team that wanted to come in and build their own back end of the wallet infrastructure so that they wouldn't have to license it from you?
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit on my side. Can you repeat that question again?
In your estimation, what would be the time and resources and how many developers, so to speak, would it take to actually build the back end? If a company wanted to come in and build the back end of the wallet from scratch for their own use, or even if somebody wanted to, raise some funds and build an open source back end of the wallet, the server side stuff, how much time would that take? I mean, how much time did it take you guys to do? And I know this is kind of a question that can't be answered 100%, but what are the resources and money involved in doing something like that? What's the barrier to entry?
I'd say it's about a month of effort right now to do something that's robust and handles lots of different cases. Valentine's been working on it all of this week to make sure the affiliate program is properly integrated with the wallet, and we've got a lot of features there. There's a lot of effort that goes into preventing abuse of the system, where people try to use the fact that the faucet is paying the transaction fees to squat on accounts without having to pay for anything. So those are the two main challenges there, but it's an insignificant amount of work compared to the amount of work required to create the entire wallet.
Xerox saying, so the GUI is no longer open source as per the definition. Would that be a correct statement, Bytemaster?
It's no longer free. It's still open. Everyone can read the code.
Gotcha.
And it is free for individual users. It is free for anyone who wants to create a light wallet that you can download and distribute. So it's only not free if your intent is to create a competitor to OpenLedger or a similar type hosted wallet service. Our expectation is if you're hosting one of those services, you have a plan to make money, whether from ads or from referral income or whatever. And if you have a plan for monetizing that, then we would like to monetize it that way. The only other alternative to monetization is to have the BitShares stakeholders fund 100% of the development of the GUI. But I think the BitShares stakeholders like the fact that we've been profitable for the past 10 days and would like to see that continue versus paying to build something that's completely open source. So there's this balance. If BitShares stakeholders paid for everything, then it should be completely open source and it should benefit the BitShares ecosystem as a whole. If the BitShares hasn't paid for everything, then it's getting a GUI, and just like Bitcoin, all the services built around Bitcoin, they have to have some way of monetizing it. And not all Bitcoin wallets are necessarily open source. Blockchain.info doesn't open source their entire system so that anyone who wants to clone it can clone it. Our hosted wallets are the equivalent of blockchain.info. It's open source for the downloadable wallets, and that's the equivalent of Bitcoin Qt or Electrum. Those are open source. You can do whatever you want and deploy. But if you're trying to create a blockchain.info, then it's not free for you.
Jay Calfee here is saying CNX might clarify the license. As long as a referral fee of X on BTS chain is kept, this license allows. And then people to experiment with redistribute modification. It allows for the individual ready. A more refined license can spell out how to do this in a group, as Dan has said in Mumble. Just something I thought was a good thing to bring in there. And now, as long as we're also talking about the referral system, Fav has brought up a question regarding that as well. He says, what about the faucet?
Faucet and server-side stuff is not free. And that's the other component to a multi-user website. So it will probably be open source in the sense that everyone can see the code, but it won't be free. As far as graphene licensing, if it's used with the BitShares network, it's BSD. You can do whatever you want. So the actual backend C++ code, you can do anything you want except create alternative blockchains.
So graphene is licensed to BitShares, but not to alternative blockchains unless they pay a licensing fee, which is no change from what we've talked about in the past. Is that correct?
That is correct. So I think that there's a lot to be said from BitShares' perspective of having lots of competition in the hosted wallet space. And so there's a very reasonable argument to be made that the BitShares network should attempt to buy out Cryptonomex interest in it and then completely open source the GUI as well, because then everyone can do it, and that would probably help BitShares the most. But what we decided in the short term is what helps BitShares the most is for Cryptonomex to have some type of profit model, some type of business model that allows us to raise money and grow. So Cryptonomex tries to raise money on the same basis as blockchain.info would try to raise money, except with BitShares, we've got the referral program and a more clear revenue stream. So I would say we're not opposed to the concept of a buyout, but we don't want to undercut our own ability to be profitable and to have a business model, because that would ultimately hurt BitShares the most. As much as possible, I'd like to avoid worker proposals that cause the network not to be profitable. If we can find ways of funding improvement to the network through alternative monetization strategies, then the network can remain profitable and we can have a really strong marketing message that, hey, BitShares is actually generating income. Do you want to own a piece of a profitable business? And you can start valuing BitShares traditional company?
Mindflux says yes. Feel free to ask. He says that the license change basically kills contributor commits because CNX gets all the profit. Is this correct?
Contributor commits still benefit users who use the Light Wallet, and they can use that for free. Yeah, so there is a large benefit to the open source community. Z-Rock made a comment that, so the only wallet we have is not free, and that's not true. We have a free wallet. The only hosted wallet we have is not free. And yes, they share a lot of the same source code, 99.9% the same. But we do have free wallets. The open source community can contribute and improve upon the Light Wallet. And all those changes are free and can be redistributed and do whatever you want with. The only thing that's not free right now is hosting a server with a wallet on it. That's the only thing that's not free. So we tried to make this as open as possible. We recognize the importance of there being a wallet that is open source, that can be modified, that can be improved, and that we have no direct control over. We don't want to control the 100% of the wallet market. That's not the idea. We want the network to have its own wallet.
So what you're saying is to host a wallet that would allow people to register directly with them, correct? Without cutting CNX in on any of the referral fees.
Effectively.
And that's essentially the reason for why you guys are going this route at present.
Yes, you can distribute and use the source code of the wallet in an app all you want. There are no restrictions there. So, and also we are very permissive on it. If you want to start a business on it, sure, go ahead, start a business, use it. We don't charge you anything up front.
This will be interesting to see. Do you guys plan on this being something that remains intact for a while, or do you have a point in time where if you reach a certain goal of some sort that this could change, or have you guys thought about this at all?
We think about things all the time, and we see lots of pros and cons, right? We obviously want the BitShares price to go up. We want to see increased user adoption. We want to actually see people benefit from the existence of BitShares, right? So I think at the end of the day, our goal is still to find free market solutions for securing life, liberty, and property. And that means that we want a decentralized exchange. We want user adoption. We don't want to control the entire thing. We want it to be distributed. And it seems like our biggest problem right now is that people are just giving us the control as much as we try to push it back and say, no, you all take control. You set up this, set up delegates and witnesses and committee members and whatnot. Take over development, create alternative wallets. We want all that. We welcome all of that. And we're really charging almost nothing for everything that we've been pouring into it.
I mean, it makes sense to me. And one question that was brought up regarding this is, for anybody who's interested, how much do you guys charge for this license?
Right now, we only ask for half of the referral income you get as a result of registering users on your site.
So a 50-50 split.
Yes, 50-50 split for not having to build your own wallet.
Now, if they want to build their own wallet...
If they build their own wallet from their own code, they can do whatever they want. We have no control over the entire space. It doesn't take very much to build your own wallet. I know of one project that's already in the works that's building their own wallet as we speak. So, and it's not Moonstone. So there are other people out there that are building wallets to take advantage of the referral program. And if you want to negotiate some other deal where you pay a fixed price to us and then have no restrictions, that's also available. But we find that most people don't want to pay if they don't make anything, right? And so it's a no risk proposition to use our source code, and just share a percentage of whatever you happen to make with us. And we're not holding it in to prevent competition. We assume anyone who is going to take the code that we've produced and host a wallet is in it to make money. And if they're allowed to make money, then we should certainly be allowed to make money.
Certainly. I mean, it makes sense. It's interesting to see how, kind of to the point that you made, how whenever things are in the distance, the community has a tendency, we all have a tendency to not really engage with the ideas until they're right on the table in front of us. And there has to be a way of kind of moving past that issue and trying to overcome it. I'm definitely interested to hear what people's opinions are over time and what we build and our community starts using as a kind of a protocol by which we start accomplishing these things.
You haven't eliminated the risk, Bytemaster. That's inherent, but you've reduced it as much as reasonably possible. The risk is upon whether the market grows, but it's not an upfront, you have to pay to get the license in order to even try your hand at getting income through the growth of the network. You've eliminated that risk. So I think you've done as much as you possibly could. You've gone overboard in that regard. So there's risk, but it's inherent in the nature of this market.
So I'd like to pivot this discussion to a related topic that also affects this, and that is network transaction fees. There's been calls to lower the transfer fee because the transfer fee is too high, and at the same time, there's been calls to lower the market fee because those fees are too high. And if we heeded both of those calls and took them down to the prices that people are asking for, then it completely kills, 50% of zero is zero, right? And so we might as well completely open source the hosted wallet.
Don't forget about the feed fees as well.
Yeah, well, I'll get to talking about the feed fees as well, just to clarify that for everyone. So as a community, we have a real challenge with respect to setting transaction fees. I want to state that I'm not going to be the dictator here, and that this issue is something that I do believe the stakeholders should vote on. And while we don't have all the committees, I'm going to take several different proposals and nominate a different Init committee member as being for each of these proposals. And we can just use the existing committee members as a way of polling the stakeholders of what to do about fees. And we'll go from there. I would really like to see the vote, number of people participating in voting or setting a proxy to vote for them. I'd like to see that increase so we can actually have some community consensus here. As much as possible, I want to eliminate the idea that I'm dictator and I'm setting fees. And I want to involve everyone, because a lot of this stuff isn't an exact science. There is no right answer. And we can go from there. So we need a system that... All right, so let's talk about the issues here, and I'll try to present the case for the lower fees, even though I'm against lower fees. The idea is the perception is worse than the reality, and but perception is all that matters. It might be cheaper to trade on the internal market, paying the 10 BitShares to place an order, even if you end up having to cancel it and it never gets filled. It might be cheaper to trade on our network, but the perception that you have to pay to do that goes against the grain. It goes against what people are used to. And market participants are irrational in the sense that they'd rather pay a percentage of completed orders, even if it ends up being more. My analysis of the situation is that for 99.9% of users, those who are manually entering the orders and updating their orders, the fees are an order of magnitude less than any centralized exchange, even as they are today. And for every time I mention that, someone counters with, well, it's the 1% of users who are running bots and providing liquidity that actually make all this possible. And that these same fees make those users unprofitable. So I've analyzed that situation, and even for the vast majority of people running bots, unless you update your order 300 times for every one time it's filled, it's still more profitable to pay a fee every time you update than to pay a percentage when it gets filled. That said, the BitShares network is not entirely without percentage-based, volume-based fees. The problem is those fees don't go to the referrers, they go to the asset issuers. So if you're trading BitShares against the trade BTC pair, one half of the matched order has no fee. The person who receives the BitShares pays no market fee. But the person who receives the trade BTC pays a 0.2% fee, just like they would on a centralized exchange, in which case you have both volume-based fees and placing of order fees. So if you have everyone trading user-issued assets, and we get all the big exchanges and lots of liquidity providers on there with their own assets, and they're all charging fees, it becomes very similar to a traditional exchanges, except you also have this order place fee. So there's that. And on the transfer side of things, when it comes to peer-to-peer payments, 20 cents is seen as high because PayPal has 0 fees for peer-to-peer transfers. But if you look at it from the perspective of consumer to merchant purchases, the fees are low. And so depending on which market you're in, you want different fees, but it's very, very hard to differentiate peer-to-peer versus consumer to merchant. The only way we can differentiate it is to have the receiver pay the fee, which is simply a matter of changing the GUI so that the amount that you transfer is the amount plus the fee, and the amount that the other person receives is the amount minus the fee. In that situation, senders don't see it, and everyone can feel like they're paying it, and the receivers, the merchants, they're the ones that will end up seeing all the fees, but they won't care because it's so much cheaper than taking credit cards or anything else.
Plus, they can take the fees out of whatever their product they're charging. So, in effect, they don't have to pay them. It's passed on to the consumer.
Right, and that gets back to the perception thing. At the end of the day, the consumer always pays the fees. Yeah, they always pay somehow. They either pay through higher spreads in the market, or they pay through higher prices for products, or they pay through ads on some site, or they pay through rate limiting, or there's no way of getting around that the person who's consuming the resources ends up paying for it in one manner or the other. But it's this perception issue that can be completely irrational, but very real. And we can't, I've learned this in the past. I can't expect everyone to be as rational as I am, to do the raw calculating. And people are going to respond to gut. They're going to automatically assume that it's more expensive on BitShares, even if they'd actually save money if they did the math. And if we require users to do the math before they feel like they're saving money, we lose. Whereas conversely, if we make users feel like they're saving money until they do the math and realize they're not, well, we can win. So that's the overall debate. And then there's another aspect to this, and that is you want introductory rates to be free. You know, the first hit's free, and then after that, we raise the price. People don't like raising prices, but at the same time, introductory offers are a good way of bootstrapping network effect, which then gives you the ability to charge more in the future. As someone posted, babies shouldn't make money. And if this is a baby network, it shouldn't be making money. But once it's grown up, then it has the right to earn money. And this all comes back down to a fundamental concept we've had since the beginning of the BitShares network, is that whatever we do, it should be profitable in order to be self-sustaining. And the profit the costs have to either come from shareholders or from users, but the costs are going to be there. And so in this case, we have some costs which are technical costs, bandwidth, memory, computers, hosting, that type of stuff. But we also have the cost of user acquisition, and low fees mean that we have to pay from some other source to acquire the users. And if we only way we can grow or sustain, or the only business model that works is with zero or no fees, that means that we don't have a profitable business. We need to generate enough income to cover both the cost of operating the network and the cost of paying the salespeople and the entrepreneurs to go out there and take risks, set up websites, run marketing campaigns, all in the hopes of getting something. So the fee-based approach makes it very easy to tell who's contributing by bringing real users that are actually using the system and adding value. Compared to what we had before the referral program was, let's dilute shareholders to pay some marketers and then debate about which marketers actually generated results. And of course, the perception of inflation is just as bad as the perception of high fees. So what we really have here is this feeling that everyone says free sells. I agree. Free will absolutely sell. Free is not sustainable. It does not represent the costs involved in growing. So free also kills.
I hate to interrupt, but I think that it's really important to plug this and kind of ask you. These fees change from being just a normal everyday and a premium account holder, though, correct?
Correct. And that's part of what bootstraps the referral system is. If you want to join the network and be involved with what we're doing, and you commit a one-time fee of $100, then the fees are insignificant thereafter. You are a member. You've done your part to support the development and growth and marketing, and you're done. So the fees are only high for those who don't want to join up and become a member of what we're doing. And I think the concept that we should all be striving for is to sell memberships and make the value proposition of being a member very high versus trying to sell individual transactions. But the only way that a membership makes sense is if there's some benefit to being a member. And if we lower fees, you eliminate any benefit to being a member, and then we don't have this membership bootstrapping incentive anymore.
Is there a reason, or is there an argument against trying to explore the possibility of having volume-based fees on the core token? I know you mentioned that they're already set up for, an issuer of a user-issued asset to have a volume-based fee, but I'm just thinking as far as making it similar to the experience of what traders are seeing on a centralized exchange now. Could there be a trade-off where we lower the fee to open an order or whatever down to something very, very small, like say a tenth of a BTS, and have a volume-based fee upon the successful execution of the order? Same thing with transfers. T-Bone asks in the sidebar here, what's the challenge with percentage fees or percentage-based fees on transfers? So would that be a trade-off, do you think, or is that a hard fork that would have to be implemented somewhere down the road?
There are trade-offs, but you're asking for us to increase fees by doing that.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, there could be that would be beneficial for the network, perhaps. We might be able to trade the perception to our advantage. Okay, come to BitShares, you're getting the advantage of a decentralized network. You're still going to pay less volume-based fee than you would on a central exchange, but for you're going to pay a tenth of a fraction of a penny to open an order. That's your trade-off, because hey, this is a decentralized exchange, and you've got to pay to broadcast something across the network. But when your order is executed, you're going to pay significantly less in volume fees than you will on a centralized exchange. And we could tweak that to still work to our advantage. And if the volume-based fees are on the core asset, then that could be worked into the referral program, right? And referrers could get a percentage of that as well, or affiliates.
Is it I hate to interrupt you guys before Bytemaster answers, but is it entirely true that centralized exchanges are actually charging fees? I see on like Polynex and BTER, I don't see these fees. Am I incorrect?
So Polynex, it's when you withdraw, there are huge fees. They take a % commission on withdrawal. So those are deposit withdrawal fees, which is another metric. The argument against no fees on there is that your order book can be manipulated and you can fake volume. So there's that, right? So there's two types of changes we can discuss. One is just tweaking the parameters of what the blockchain already has. It's entirely possible for the committee members to charge a market-based fee and to tweak the other fees in the system. The other is to change behavior outside of what the parameters allow. So right now, market-based fees go to the issuer of the asset. They don't go to the referrer. But I suppose it's entirely possible for the BitShares assets, for market-based fees there to go to the referrer. So there's that. Another change that we can do, I created an issue for it. This is also a hard forking change, is you pay a high fee, relatively speaking, when you place an order. You pay a low fee or insignificant fee when you cancel an order, and you also get the majority of your order placement fee back when you cancel an order, which means you only pay a fixed fee when your order is filled. So if your order is filled, you don't get your order placement fee back. If it's canceled, you get it back, minus a small cancellation fee. Under that approach,
I like that too.
You have fixed price system where it doesn't matter what your volume is, you're paying something like 25 cents per filled order, which means that as long as you're trading in amounts greater than $25, it's cheaper than a lot of other places. So those are some of the things we can do, but that type of thing would be a hard forking change that we'd have to implement if that's what the community feels would be better. So at the end of the day, we can't allow order placing to be free because orders stay on the books. We need to make sure that those orders are eventually canceled. So it's recycled, if you will. So it's like recycling of cans. When you turn in the can, you get some money back. When you cancel your order, you get some of your fee back. That way, users don't create lots of orders and then leave them on the books.
Sure. Does that answer your question, Crypto? I hate to interrupt on those things, but it just felt like something to add in there.
I'm sorry. My question was whether or not it would require, I guess, a hard fork in order to do that, which is what you answered that it would. So, I think that's something maybe it's a little more serious, obviously, right? Because we don't want to have hard forks on a regular basis here. So, but yeah, thank you.
I'd like to get back to the big picture for a second and just state that I don't care about the exchange features at all myself. Day trading in altcoins is not a big deal to me. I know it is to some, and I know it's a market right now, but it's tiny. And so I say mass adoption is only going to come from the referral program and by providing a way for people to get out of their 9-to-5s and experiment with something that can actually leave an inheritable ongoing revenue stream. It also brings the possibility of children getting involved in the world economy. So I'd rather see BitShares not say the decentralized exchange. I'd rather say something like a crypto movement, a lifeboat, a rocket ship.
We've gone through so many iterations of what we want to define ourselves as, because BitShares itself can perform so many functions, right? Max Wright, I believe, was the first person to really pinpoint the decentralized exchange way of describing ourselves. Yeah, it does only cover one aspect of what can be accomplished. But I think that there was a strategy behind that, because cryptocurrency itself, well, all exchanges really are all centralized, essentially. And pretty much even regular bank account holders can get quote unquote doxxed, right? Look at Greece. But that's kind of, I think, the reason why we've taken that path. And please feel free to tell me if I'm wrong and why, if anybody feels that I am incorrect on that statement.
Well, I think, there is no one thing to view it, but different wallet providers can take completely different pitches on the overall infrastructure. You could create a sports betting website that is just a front end for BitShares and make all kinds of money by just publishing the results of different sporting events and letting people bet. That is a huge business opportunity in its own right, and the BitShares network supports it. And doesn't have anything to do with altcoins, which is, I agree, a small market. BitShares was originally created because of Mt. Gox failing and the perception that all centralized exchanges would be the target of government shutdowns. The world's changed since BitShares was originally created. I don't think anyone here is worried that the government of the world are going to shut down all cryptocurrency exchanges. And the exchanges that we have today are insured. They're using multi-sig for their security, and they're regulated. They're playing with all the laws. They're very profitable, and so they're growing, at least in terms of Bitcoin, which means the threat of getting doxxed by someone like Bitstamp is far less than the threat of being doxxed by some of the early players who were doing trading cards when Bitcoin first came out. The industry has matured, and the need for a decentralized exchange is something that appeals to those who don't like centralization, those who want stuff, but it's really the people who are trying to disrupt the status quo and do things that are in a gray area, that the decentralized exchange matters the most. So when it comes to things like Greece and the main banks, yes, there is a huge problem with the banking system, and that's why there's need for cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency can give you protection from getting doxxed by fractional reserve. So,
well stated.
At the same time, just because a bank is likely to do fractional reserve, the exchanges are not allowed to do fractional reserve legally, and they are insured. So the biggest problem we have now is that the exchanges have their money in banks, and an exchange could get doxxed by being completely honest and just having their bank do a bail-in, or having their bank go bankrupt and then you can't withdraw because they don't have any other banking partners. There's lots of things that can happen, but those types of things can happen in all markets at all times. And the general public and the masses are used to those risks of happening. They consider the risk of that happening so small that they don't even bother planning for it. They consider the risk of hyperinflation so small that they don't bother considering it. But there was a video posted talking about the, 8 years and $1 billion. What have we learned in the cryptocurrency space?
We're getting kind of far afield from fees again. Now, I love this philosophical discussion. It's very important, but we only have so much time today. It's up to you where you want to take this conversation, but I don't want to lose sight of the issue with witnesses and in their fees that they have to pay in this conversation, if we can come back to that.
All right, real quick on the price feeds. Right now, there's a fee that you have to pay to publish a price feed. The reason there's a fee on publishing a feed is because witnesses aren't the only ones that can publish feeds. Any user can create a private bit asset and publish feeds. So there has to be a price on it. Now, all witnesses are lifetime members, which means that their fee is, I think, 0.2 or 0.4 BitShares to publish a feed, which isn't that much.
That's with the rebating, the 80% rebate. You're referring to that low fee, right?
Correct. That's with the rebate, which all witnesses get. So that's a relatively low fee. I could see lowering it more, except I don't think we need feeds to be published more often than they are. We can debate how often we want feeds to be published. And if you want the feeds to be published more often, then obviously we'll have to lower fees.
As you're talking about the rate of publishing, can we talk about that very briefly about the need for what the frequency needs to be? Because aren't all of our feeds coming from the same source right now, or is Yahoo actually doing real-time publishing so that the frequency is more important?
Well, the only thing the feed is affecting is general margin calls, and you only need to publish if the price has changed by a significant amount since the last time you published. So if the price hasn't moved by 1%, there's no need to publish.
I understand, but if the information that you're deriving the change is coming from doesn't update very frequently, then you don't have any basis for saying that the change took place at all. So that's my question: is what's our input source, and is the input source right now really pretty much one source?
Well, I don't know, because I don't write the feed scripts, but I think we should have as diverse number of input sources as possible, so that no input source can become a vector of attack on the network. So there needs to be many sources, and we should publish feeds as often as there's something that's meaningful has changed.
Agreed.
And I think a intelligent feed publishing script should only update the feed once per day, or if updating the feed would change the current median, or if the current median needs to be changed, I guess, by more than a certain percentage. So generally speaking, no one is doing any trading at the price feed. It's there for forced settlement. Forced settlement should almost never occur because market prices are better than forced settlement. So the need to have the feed be 100% accurate isn't there. The only time that you would need rapid updates to the price feed is if there was a quick collapse in the price. The price drops 5%. Okay, publish a feed. But it's not dropping 5% constantly, and it doesn't go down and up by 5% all the time. Most of the time, it's fluctuating for hours at a time with, just a fraction of a percent change in those hours. In which case,
I think you've addressed the primary concern, and one is that you don't really know the answers. This is something for the witnesses to figure out, and there's other pressure here to move on to other topics. So I'll conclude by simply saying we need to get together, witnesses, and figure out, first of all, we're pretty much monolithic with regard to how we're producing the feeds right now because we're using the same script algorithms. So we need to diversify. That's one thing, and until we do that, we don't need to be publishing any more than we already are. At least that's my opinion. Others can chime in, but we should be moving on to other topics of interest here too, as I believe.
Well, what about witness? What about witness like Hangouts or something like that, where you guys can coordinate all this stuff? Or I know that there's a Telegram channel and a Slack channel. I don't know that it's completely filled in yet, but Bytemaster was looking to have access to speak with all the witnesses and with respect to this. Would anybody be willing to try to put something together?
I think that's pretty much already in place for the most part. I think most of the witnesses, certainly the majority, are already on either Slack or Witness or Telegram. So I think that channel for Bytemaster to reach us is there for his use, but it is difficult to get us together to talk in a constructive manner. There's lots of conversations on the Witness channel that we've discussed from time to time, but it's kind of difficult to pull together a consensus with that.
That's actually why I was thinking Hangouts maybe on a weekly or bi-weekly basis might be valuable, because then a witness who's, in a different time zone might be able to sit down and listen to what everybody else is talking about. In something like Telegram, I notice, I've been away from it for like 4 hours and there's 700 and some messages. So it's kind of hard to, but anyway, yeah.
I'd like to address some other issues real quick. So one is the dynamic fees, the percentage-based fees. That can work for core assets. It doesn't work for other assets because we don't know what their actual value is. it might be possible to do that for anything that's witness fed assets as well, because we presumably have something that's trustworthy there. But percentage-based fees cannot be applied to user-issued assets without, because there's just no way of knowing what the actual value is that's being transferred. So that's the main challenge there. The other challenge is trying to make the fees entirely calculatable, given only a fee schedule and the transaction itself. The more information we have to know in order to calculate the fee for the transaction, the more complex it makes the wallet. It means that if we don't know what the price is, the conversion or the value is, until the time the transaction is included in the blockchain, it's possible that you construct a transaction when it was at one value. By the time it gets published on the blockchain, it's no longer a valid transaction because the price feed updated. And that's one of the things we were really trying to avoid as we designed BitShares 2, was the number of transactions that depend upon changing chain state for their validity, particularly when it comes to calculating fees. The only thing we could do is overestimate when we pay fees in the wallet so that we're guaranteed that it's going to go through. But having users say, sorry, try again, the fee changed, is a problem. And all fees are explicit. They're listed right there in the transaction because we want the user to sign off on the fee and not get surprised when, hey, I thought the fee was going to be this, but it ended up being something insane. We had some of those problems in BitShares 1. And I'm not saying that percentage-based fees are not possible, but they're only possible for assets created by the blockchain. And when it comes to trading something like BitShares, it's not meant to be a currency. It's not meant to be something that you use to pay for stuff. The volatility is going to overwhelm almost everything else, which means we're only talking about people transferring bit assets, and that you don't need lower transfer fees on the BitShares themselves. How much does a company charge you to transfer shares in a company? It's usually much higher for the administrative overhead. So I guess that's what I'd like to address there. So perhaps you can do something with BitUSD, BitCNY, and the like to make it a percentage-based system. If we were to do that, we'd need to have the price that we use for calculating these things not change very often, so that users can depend upon the price at the time they construct their transaction. I guess there's that. So let's talk about something other than fees for a second. And this is one where I'm going to need feedback from you all. They're saying another huge problem is that the exchange is not yet presentable. So there have been some major updates to the GUI in the past week. And there was one person who came on the forum. This is just anecdotal evidence. They came on and they said they were so glad they sold months ago when the price was much higher, because now they see we're crashing. But someone asked them to check out the new exchange, and they went and they tried it out, and they came back and they say, I love it. And they're thinking about buying in now. So obviously it can't be that bad. If the GUI is not yet presentable, I'd like to know in what ways it's not presentable, because it seems to be fast, responsive, works, and doesn't crash. I think the biggest issue we have right now that we actually haven't talked about yet today is importing of wallets. For a lot of users, it's been really painless, but for some users, it's been incredibly painful. And unfortunately, the users who are having the most pain upgrading are the same users that had the most pain in the past. It's these unlucky folks who generated a lot of keys trying to recover funds in their wallet. And they did regenerate keys, and they put in a number like 10,000 or 30,000, desperately searching for their funds Whether or not they found their funds is another issue. But this creates wallets that are with so many keys that JavaScript cannot efficiently process it. And both the browser and the Light wallet choke on processing wallets with that many keys. So,
what about Roadscape's effort to weed out those insignificant and worthless keys that don't have any value in the Genesis block, or not Genesis block, but in the export wallet JSON?
This is one of those features that I wanted to have on the export code, which was to only export keys that the BitShares 09 wallet actually thinks control something. That should dramatically decrease the size of the exports. But the downside to that was, well, maybe the old wallet was screwed up and not detecting something. So we basically took the brute force approach of let's just grab all the keys because that would have the highest probability of finding users' funds.
Have two versions.
I agree. So we are aware of this problem, and we're taking several different strategies towards solving it. One is to implement a Bloom filter, which dramatically reduces the computational effort required in the wallet. The other is dumping private keys after we determine that they're not used by Graphene so that they don't continue to be a burden on the wallet. And the last one is updating the old BitShares codebase for a 0.94 release that has an extra method on it that does smarter exporting of keys. So we want to do all those things, and the priority of various tasks, it is really hard to figure out which is more important. Do we get all the partners and set up for trading, deposit withdrawal like block trades and Open Ledger? Do we fix all the bugs in the market or anything else that people have problems with? Do we get the deposit going with the affiliate programs? All these different things. We only have so many people. We can only do so many things. So we know that your funds are safe and that we'll eventually be able to import them. And we know it's possible to manually do it right now by going into your BitShares wallet. It's just a lot of work. We're not forgetting these people. We need to get around to supporting them. But I guess it really comes down to how many people are having this issue percentage-wise versus the effect of, if 20 people are having this issue, they're going to be all over the forum and it's going to seem like everyone's having this issue. But it's really 20 out of 1,000 are having the issue. And I'm not saying that those of you who are having issues are less valuable than others. But these are the types of things that we have to look at. We want to resolve it. We will resolve it. And we apologize if you haven't been able to sell your BitShares because you can't import them in this period of time.
Hey, you asked the question earlier, of anything that issues that people are having with the hosted wallet, and I think one of the most sort of glaring and obvious things is when you first open the wallet, there's no market history displayed there, and I was curious if that's something where on your list of priorities is that to get that working.
Right now, if you want market history, you leave the page open. I guess the rationale at the time that we did it was if you have lots of orders being executed, the market history will quickly fill up, and past history doesn't matter. Whereas right now, orders are being placed, a couple dozen a day, spread out over a large period of time. So the browser never has a chance to cache the market history while you've had the page open. Combined with the fact that if you switch pages, it loses the market history. So it's a case of the system's designed for when it's at scale, and it has a few issues right now before we get to scale. So as far as priority, that's a relatively high priority thing to tackle. But we can either do the hard forks to adjust the fees, or we can do the stuff to do the history, or we can do some of these other things. How important is that history to the function of the exchange? And this could probably just be not prioritized enough because I'm not a trader that looks at market history to make any decisions whatsoever. So I vote it off as a curiosity. People who are curious might want to know it, but it's not necessary for function. Am I missing something important there?
Would there be something that, speaking along these lines, would there be something that would keep let's say Polynex wanted to have us as their back end to settle all the trades? Would there be an issue with them being able to have that transaction history? I mean, it doesn't seem like there would be, since it would be something that they are building themselves on top of it, but maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, even from the perspective of someone just logging into Open Ledger, I mean, I think going back from the whole perception thing, when you get on there, any centralized exchange you go on, you see the market history there, and you think, oh, people are trading here, but it's kind of a non sequitur. It kind of throws you off a little bit because you think, oh, okay, is nobody trading here? And again, I mean, obviously the way that you explained it makes sense, but from a standpoint of perception, it seems like people come on the exchange and wonder if anybody's actually there.
Perception seems to be a word that keeps coming up too. Just something to note.
Okay, well, I think that anything we can do to demonstrate that trades are actually occurring does improve things. So I'll bump that up on the priority from a perception perspective.
A lot of the witnesses are asking questions regarding, and this is BHUZ who asked this question, who brought it up, regarding the vesting of the witness pay. Can you give some details regarding that? Help to clarify it?
I don't think it vests very long, if at all, right now.
And are there plans on, if it isn't vesting currently, which I'm assuming you're going to have to double check on, but if it isn't, do you guys plan on vesting it, or is it something that you would plan on doing, way off in the distance, or what priority would that be?
It's nothing that we are doing. We're not going to decide that. If the community wants it to be vesting, they can start a movement. I'm not going to proactively decide that we're going to do this or that in the future.
Okay,
I don't know the answer to that question.
And this would be an answer that the witnesses or the committee would provide. This is kind of a good time.
It's a parameter set by the committee members.
We're talking about that. Puppies brought up an issue some time ago in the forum, not too long ago, about there being a possible problem with making withdrawals. I've done it twice myself and haven't seen any obvious problems, but I need to get that issue clarified. Nobody in the witness channel has clarified whether there really is an issue, a problem that will cause a forking or some problem with withdrawing withdrawing pay for witnesses.
There was an issue on the last week where someone withdrew pay and it caused 60% of the witnesses to fork from the other 40%, or I guess the other way around. And that was because of an inconsistency in how IDs or some state was allocated with witness pay. We have not clearly identified or been able to reproduce the problem. So there is some kind of latent problem that could cause some disruption to the network. My gut instinct says that as long as you've been a witness for a long time, all your IDs and balances and all that other stuff is well established, we're unlikely to have any issues, and you can probably withdraw your pay. We're going to have to try it at some point. What we're working on is adding some extra diagnosis tools to try to figure out what's causing the non-deterministic behavior. If you're a witness and you need to withdraw your pay for some reason, we should probably don't do it every day, and just do it during a time of the day when I'm at work, so I can do something. So don't do it on the weekends or late at night.
I'm doing it only from the standpoint of doing it to pay the fees for feeds, and my ID is new. I've changed it from delegate.verbaltech to verbaltech2, so it is a new ID. So I will be cognizant of this issue and watch carefully and try to do it mostly on when you're around.
It's old in the sense that all of the witnesses have re-indexed since you've registered, so they should all have the same IDs and same state for that. So you should probably be perfectly fine there. We're still trying to track down the exact cause. I don't even know if it will happen again. It might have just been a artifact of the bootstrapping process and won't happen again. So if you need, all I'm saying is we need to try it just to find out if the issue is still there, and you should go ahead and do it during business hours on East Coast time, so that if something does happen for the network, I can respond and attempt to diagnose it. That's the only thing I'd ask right now. But I don't think it's going to be an issue. It certainly doesn't affect all the other features or anyone else's funds. And if something does happen, the witnesses are very responsive, and any downtime should be minimal. And with the last irreversible block metric, we're guaranteed that everyone is aware of exactly at what point your transactions are irreversible. So I just want to iterate that the network's safe. There's an issue where some witnesses can get into an inconsistent state. It is fixed by re-indexing and move forward from there.
Buzz is suggesting that you join the Telegram witness chat to test the vesting.
I haven't been able to figure out Telegram. I've downloaded the app, but I can't figure out how to join any particular group.
You need to be invited, I'm pretty sure. So
well, then that might be the problem. Please invite me and give me instructions on what to do with the invitation.
We're sitting at about an hour and 22 minutes. Do you mind if I ask a couple questions here that are written up that we haven't covered yet?
Ask away.
Thank you. A top candle who is not here at present posted a question on the forums regarding if you know anything about BTC38 or UNB not updating. And he says this is an issue if we keep doing hard forks and it causes a significant downtime in liquidity. Also, when will referral be up? But we don't have to worry about that part. So the question about BTC38 and UNB, are you familiar with anything that's going on there?
I haven't heard from those two exchanges. The last I heard is they had intended to upgrade, and they announced that they were going to support it. As far as their exact upgrade plans, they have not reached out to me with any questions about what to do or how to do things. I have to give Pollinix a lot of credit there. They reached out, and I supported them in a very timely manner for every question that they had regarding the upgrade. Xerox published excellent documentation on how to set it up with the delayed node, and even with example scripts on how to monitor accounts for deposits. So we've got lots of documentation out there. All the exchanges should know about it, and if they don't know about it and they contact me or anyone on the forum, they get all the answers they need in a very timely manner. So I think that's all there. We even have in the release section on BitShares instructions on how to import wallets with thousands of keys via the CLI wallet, which is what most exchanges should be using. But yes, there is a need to avoid constant hard forks, and I'd like to minimize the rate at which we do these things. So I'm sure we'll probably find a few other small things that we want to address. But in the long term, we need to stop the hard fork rate so everyone can catch up. That would really help.
So where would you say that our priorities are in terms of this? Just getting the witnesses coordinated first?
Yeah, the number one priority is that all the witnesses have a reliable production of blocks so that anyone who's connected to the network stays in sync and we continue processing transactions. One of the benefits of light wallets is that when something happens, there's someone out there that's going to get it back up. And all you have to do is wait and it'll be fixed, and you don't need to download a new version and upgrade your wallet and resync and reindex all the time. So I think we're going to see a lot of benefit that the disruptions of doing these periodic hard forks will be relatively minimal toward most users of the wallet. And only the witnesses and full nodes, seed nodes and exchanges need to be worried about the hard fork.
And this dovetails really well. Ken Code was bringing up, it's not necessarily a question, but it is a comment from the BitShares 2 release coordination thread, where they're basically talking about, I'm just going to boil it down here for brevity's sake. It boils down to the various witnesses being dispersed across multiple VPS instances, for instance, not having them all at, like, say, Amazon or DigitalOcean. What are your thoughts on this? I understand that places like Amazon and DigitalOcean have their own redundancy features set up, and they have multiple locations and all that good stuff. So where do you stand on that? Is that a big issue or no?
Geodiversity is good. Sometimes all of DigitalOcean, all of Amazon goes down. And so we should definitely have some diversity there. And each individual witness ultimately needs to be diversified on an individual basis. So as the system grows, I would expect a witness to have one node in DigitalOcean and another one with someone else. And then watchdogs to switch which one's producing blocks if there's a problem. So we shouldn't have witnesses going offline. They should each individually be fully redundant. So I guess that's my answer there. As far as BTC 38 saying that there is a bug and they won't upgrade, I've heard those rumors. BTC 38 has not contacted us with any information about the nature of any particular bug. And
so you're largely in the dark on that.
Right. I know of no such bug. Yeah, I'd like to address a question from Thomas. What about the initial witness pay of $300 a month and the number of witnesses? And people ask, why do I continue to vote more in? Voting more in is basically diluting other witnesses, so the pay is going down. Right now, the witness pay is somewhere between $200 and $300 a month. I'm voting for anyone who wants to run a witness to be as decentralized as possible, but I strongly encourage others to vote to have fewer witnesses and to discriminate against them. I'm trying very hard to be fair. I don't want to be accused of picking favorites, so I'm going to vote for everyone who is doing the job and producing blocks and who I know have reason to believe is a unique individual. So we currently have 31 witnesses in play. If there's more, I'll vote for you if you'd like to give it a shot, but I would encourage everyone else to vote for how many you think there should be and who you think they should be. I don't have the time personally to review all the witnesses in order to filter them down. So right now, my only thing I can tell is, are you producing the blocks or not? If someone reports to me something with a particular witness, I will vote them out. That's just being safe. So it was noted to me that Ken Code's witness was not actually unique. It was being run by a data security node. So I voted out Ken Code. Nothing against Ken Code and nothing against data security node. I just want to have only one actual person responsible for each of these things, and we're not getting any benefit from having those two in there. So I think that's where we are. As far as the cost goes, the income per witness is based upon the price of BitShares and the frequency with which they publish feeds and the number of feeds that they publish. And we addressed that earlier in this conversation. Any witness who thinks they need to be making more can publish feeds less often to increase their income. And those who think that feeds need to be published more often should vote against them. If witness pay becomes an issue, the committee members can always vote to increase the pay. But it seems like we've got plenty of people willing to be witnesses and that the pay is more than enough to cover the actual costs of being a witness, as far as not including the witness time. That's where I stand on that. Please get out the vote. Start vetting these witnesses. Witnesses, please publish a URL with your witness It can be a GitHub Pages thing that says who you are and what you stand for and why you're going to be fair. Where's your server? What kind of specs are you running? Please be proactive in giving people information about why they should vote for you. So I think there's lots of effort on that front.
This would be a good time, I think, if it's okay to end this. But before we do, while you're talking about the voting, I think it's important that we recognize if you don't have the time to look into these individuals yourselves, that is why proxies are in place. There are individuals out there. Fav is the first one I've seen. I'm sure that there are probably others, and I'm not trying to just forget about all of you. But I know that Fav was the one I've seen who is compiling a list. So there are individuals who are already and are going to be compiling lists of individuals who are fulfilling the certain requisites that those individuals themselves, the proxies, believe that witnesses should ensure. For instance, like the geodiversity that we were talking about. The committee members will be making decisions based on regarding things like. Could you remind everybody here? What exact decisions will the committee members be making?
Committee members are responsible for defining all fees and all network parameters. So block size, basically any number that you hear, the committee members can more or less tweak in the system.
And do you see proxies for that as well? Or is that going to be something? Right
now, I think it would make sense to have the committee members and the proxy voters be one and the same. Now, we obviously don't have enough competition in the space right now. So I think anyone who's campaigning to be a proxy should also be a committee member until we've filled up the committee with as many people as we want. And that by voting for someone to be a proxy, you're also, in a way, supporting them for the committee.
Is there a way to discern from information that's publicly available on the blockchain what percentage of influence a particular account has in their voting influence? So if, say, 5% of the BitShares holders by stake were all pointed at one particular account, is there a way to tell that, that account now has 5% of the BitShares voting power behind it every time it casts its vote?
Technically, it's possible to write code to get that number. That information is not currently easily computable. So it's not already computed and easy to display. We'd have to write some changes in the C++ witness code to track that state. But the information does exist. It's on the blockchain. We can get that information.
So in the future, there could be perhaps an API call that would get that information if you had written the code to put it all together, essentially.
Yes, basically we have to index that information, then replay the blockchain, and we'll be good.
Whoa, I have no clue what that was, Elmato.
All right, so we're not trying to profit from feeds. I want to make sure that's very clear. The only thing that feeds and the fee on feeds is for is spam prevention. So the reason why there's a fee is because not all regular users can also create bit assets and publish feeds. So I'd say we could probably lower the fee a little bit more and still be effective at spam prevention, but probably not too much lower. You just figure out how much does it cost to flood the network at 100 transactions per second with feeds. And,
can the feed fee for witnesses for the standard bit assets be differentiated from the user provided bit assets or not?
Technically, yes, but that would be a hard fork.
All right, then I'd say no then.
At least for right now.
Well, something to put on the list for a hard fork in the future, for sure.
That list just keeps growing.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, Bytemaster.
Well,
That's why you come here, so we could give you a list.
I'd like to point out that the fact that there's always hard forking changes is the reason why you need governance and adaptable consensus model. You could try to do something like this with a Ethereum style scripting type thing. But even with all that scripting, there's hard forks to enable better scripting behavior, to add new opcodes, to handle all the corner cases that the scripting environment didn't expose. And so you're never going to escape it, and you either have a rigid system that never hard forks, or you plan for hard forks so you can add the features you need. But I do think that it would be good to group as many hard forks as possible into one upgrade rather than requiring users to upgrade all the time. But for now, we'll lower the fees on publishing feeds. And in the event that it starts to be abused, we can raise the fees.
Sure.
There is a way that we can simulate making it cheaper for witnesses to publish than other users, and that is to increase witness pay enough to compensate for the feeds. It all just circles back to them anyway. So if we need to, we can increase witness pay enough to cover their feed costs.
And that is one of the I'm sorry, I'm just wanting to make sure this is one of the parameters that you were talking about, the committee being able to set and define, yes. Right?
The committee can change the witness pay, which means that if we decide we want feeds more often and that witnesses are starting to quit or not publish feeds often enough, then we can increase pay, and the fees just go right back to us. So I think it's something that we can do as the way of making witnesses subsidized. That doesn't require a hard fork. And that's what I'm finding, is that there's things that we can do on this network that don't require a hard fork, such as temporarily increasing the fee of an operation as a way of disabling that operation. We didn't design in a disable operation feature, but we do have ways of effectively achieving that, and that makes it very powerful. That's a way of working around things.
Is the UIA creation bug fixed?
It is fixed. We're going to lower the fees here back to what they were before later this afternoon.
He's asking a very good question here. Is there a cost to set up a committee account, and what would that be if there is?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's not expensive. I think it's probably on the order of $5.
And committee members are still unpaid accounts and will be, right?
Committee members are unpaid, and they must be lifetime members.
And that's as it should be, because we don't want to influence. The committee members should be as politically neutral as they can be. You get my point. It needs to not be incentivized to become a committee member, because that's like buying your bias.
What do you mean by that, Tom?
We don't want people to become committee members and just collect money for doing nothing.
Exactly. Paid politicians. We don't want paid politicians.
So as of this point then, and I guess this is just kind of parroting what you said earlier in the Hangout, Bytemaster, would be a good point in time for people to start figuring out if they want to be committee members, registering one since it's cheap, and going out there and saying, "Hey, I've got some good ideas for BitShares. If you guys vote for me, I'm going to take this in the right direction, so to speak." And
I think it's been time for 3 months to have had these conversations and campaigning. But Bytemaster's comments early in this mumble were really good about who are the ones that really have the vested interest should be the ones that are running for the committee member slots. I really like those comments.
I want to make it very clear that I am not trying to hold on to control of BitShares. I know there's lots of people that keep pointing out, oh, it's so centralized, that's decentralized in a sarcastic kind of way. Anytime I do something like unilaterally change fees or announce a hard fork, I don't want to be in that position. There's just a vacuum because no one else has stepped up. And as soon as someone steps up, I am more than happy to hand control over to someone who can do a better job than I've been doing.
I've been screaming about this in the forum for the last week or so, and I really don't know how I can possibly explain this any better and be more emphatic about it. It's up to us, folks, to get our act together and come up with a committee of people that are willing to take on this challenge and start leading the rest of the community. And I don't see much going on there either. There is a vacuum, and until we can come up with people that are willing to step up this, we're going to end up deferring to others like Bytemaster to make decisions on our behalf, and I'd like to see that end as well.
We're in a place where that's one of the reasons why I'm making sure to ask these questions and really put down, the roles of the proxy voting, the roles of the committee members, what specifically they'll do, how that's all going to play out, because it's very important that we start there, build a solid foundation of understanding, and then we can start moving forward with it. You're right that we probably should have had committee members to a degree for a while. I call them guild officers because, you guys all know the lens I look through. So basically, if you look at all these decentralized communities called guilds, they all have essentially committee members. So I do understand where you're coming from. But we're still also in that area where it's kind of new, and we're all learning to a degree. So I appreciate you guys all attending here, bringing up these points, and really, we kind of have to dig sometimes, and it seems like it's a lot of extra work to get all on the same page. But once we get there, and it will happen, especially when people are driven like Tom is to make sure it happens. It's just, we've got to, like you said, we have to move forward with it and start doing it.
Hey, can I ask a question just to clarify the exactly how the proposals are put forth and how they're implemented? So the way I understand it, any committee member can publish a proposal, and that proposal could include anything from let's create a hard fork on this date to let's change the current parameters, not through a hard fork, but just through tweaking, the current things that we can tweak, like fees, for example. Any committee member can publish that, and at that period of time, if whenever the date comes, and I'm assuming right now you've got it set, the parameters set, it's not 2 weeks, it's like a 4 hours or something like that update.
There's a 1 hour review period, but only because we control everything right now and want to be responsive. But right. The very first thing we do once we have more people involved is to expand the review period so that voters can mobilize. But to summarize it, any user can propose any transaction on the network they like. Committee members just have to approve those proposed transactions. And I'd say a barrier that we currently have is that the GUI is hard to navigate for. You can't even see the proposed transactions in the GUI. And that needs to change. That's actually on our priority list, as well as being able to register yourself as a committee member via the GUI.
Well, what do you mean by proposed transaction? Do you mean proposed, hard fork change, or proposed as in a few paragraphs explaining what it is that the proposal is? Or are you talking about specifically a transaction?
These are proposed transactions. They work just like any other multi-sig proposed transaction for regular users. The only difference is that the committee members are co-signers, multi-sig signers on a special account that has permission to change fees and parameters. So it will work just like any other proposed transaction on the network. As far as updating things, the proposals themselves, as far as they're written out, they should be some forum thread that people discuss and everything on. And at the end of the day, someone will create a transaction to make it happen. All the committee members will approve that transaction, and then after it's been approved, 2 weeks later, if those committee members are still voted in, it takes effect.
So the approval process then for any transaction that any account can create, it requires what, a 2/3 majority of the committee members to approve it?
No, it just requires 51% by threshold. It requires the threshold voting.
Okay, and then I guess again, I'm not grasping what you mean by transaction. I mean, how is it that I know I realize and understand the multi-sig, but how can you propose a transaction using parameters that I guess don't exist yet, or if you're trying to create something new, so to speak? What do you mean? I still don't understand, I guess, the whole proposed transaction.
All the transactions are already defined. in the code, you can look at all the different types of transactions that can be proposed. And there's a transaction for setting all the parameters. Those are the things that you can propose. If you want to propose a hard fork or something that doesn't exist in the code yet, such as refunding the order creation fee, or making feed publishing cheaper for witnesses, or charging volume-based fees that go to the referral program, those have to be done outside. They require a code change. And then when we're done making the hard forking code change, it will automatically take effect when the stakeholders directly vote or maybe refuse not to vote against the hard fork. So the hard fork that we code up will be conditioned rather on some absolute date and time. It will be conditioned on some vote happening. So that's how that would happen.
So how does the coordination happen then between, I'm just picturing, besides Cryptonomex, in the future we have other groups of other entities that are creating code that might end up, BitShares network wants it to integrate it into the native code. So is that entity then coordinating with the witnesses or notifying all the witnesses and how, I guess I'm wondering just the actual real life on the ground process, like how do what is the process of, okay, the hard fork is coded and written up, then you go on the forums and say, hey guys, vote on this, or there's some sort of notification that'll be in the wallet like, hey, there's a proposed hard fork here, vote before, vote if you want this, or I'm trying to put together, in my mind, like the actual process of how are people going to know or understand this is what's coming up, this is what needs to get voted on.
Effectively, it's going to be the witnesses and the committee members that have to coordinate the most. These Mumble Hangouts are a great place to discuss the pros and cons. Once everyone sort of agrees of which way we should go, informal polls on the forum to kind of get sentiment can help direct things. It's sort of like a pre-polling before the real election. But yeah, I don't have all the answers on all the coordination stuff. That's what Fuzzy's good at. So Fuzzy, you're the coordinator. Someone needs to identify these are the issues that all the ideas that are on the table, probably have meetings periodically where we review things that need to be done, prioritize them, and then make it happen. So it'd be really helpful if someone opened up issues for each of the ideas that we discussed here on GitHub and was tracking all the potential changes. And then it's just a matter of when we have a meeting, people nominate certain issues to take priority, and those would be the ones we focus on.
So going forward then, what I know that Cryptonomex is going to be, proposing future hard fork changes and things like that. Where does your support for the network, I don't want to say where does it end, but what is your guys's, at what point is it going to shift from, okay, we're have immediate oversight to, okay, I guess, I don't know. Maybe my question is premature here. I guess I'm just wondering, you guys want to move into a place where you can start proposing hard forks and, start getting paid for the work that you're doing in the future, right? We have all these issues lining up, this list of issues, and it's like, yeah, we all need this and we need this and we need this. And I'm trying to think from the perspective of Cryptonomex, like you guys have committed a certain amount already, and, what issues are going to be ones in which you're asking for payment for, or is it going to be pretty much moving forward? Everything that's issued that's a hard fork issue, you guys will be issuing publishing a worker proposal for. Is that essentially the sort of the format it's going to take?
It's going to be a case by case basis, but I can tell you that we will not be selling our BTS to fund development to subsidize the rest of the network. So unless we have a way to profit from what we're doing, we're not a charity. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. We want BitShares to be successful, and we don't want to ask anyone else to be a charity to BitShares. And we don't think that anyone else should ask us to do the same. We've already given a lot for BitShares, but it's all part of our efforts to monetize our skills and our role in the industry. The success of BitShares is important to the reputation of Cryptonomex. So we have a certain amount of vested interest in making sure BitShares is successful. So it's not like we're going to abandon it, but we're going to selectively choose the things that we do and the things we offer for free to the network. And to a large extent, I think we'd like someone else to spearhead adding features rather than Cryptonomex. And if they want to be the proponent of some new feature, they should go out there, get the funding, get the support, and then come to us and hire us to actually implement it. So we'd be a subcontractor of the person who actually goes and causes the feature to exist. I think that would be better for Cryptonomex, better for decentralization, and better for the perception. The perception is that Cryptonomex controls BitShares, and I want that perception to die as quickly as possible, so long as people don't feel like BitShares is orphaned and doesn't have anyone. So basically, grow up. We want to kick the kid out of the nest. It's time to fly on your own kind of mindset here. But we also don't, want BitShares to fall and break its neck. So that's where we are. We're trying to balance the decentralization of it with the need to. There's a lot of people that find comfort in the fact that there is someone in control. And if we just said, we're done, price would tank. And if we remain centralized, we're not going to grow. We're going to be criticized. So we need to balance that. And so we're looking after BitShares. It's our baby, but the baby needs to grow up.
We are technically at the point where you could have a stroke or be disappeared or something like that, and BitShares can continue, right?
Yes, it should. We should be at that point.
Congratulations to us.
Well, I want to counter that by saying that I very much, and I think most of us here still very much value Bytemaster's input and his presence, and BitShares will always be better with Bytemaster around, at least for any time in the foreseeable future. So let's not go down that other road. But
Apple survived without Steve Jobs. BitShares can survive without me.
I appreciate Bytemaster.
Can you guys hear me?
Don't worry.
I would like to use that silence to tap in at the moment where not everyone has left already. I proposed to create a gateway for cryptocurrencies. BitShares, something comparable to SuperNet, for example, on Next, only completely decentralized. Proposed the idea, didn't get much feedback, a bit, including a suggestion to start a worker proposal. I did that, and the feedback on this has been really bad. For now, I put this project on hold. I knew before that the BitShares community isn't really interested in other cryptocurrencies and trading them, and that it's only a small part, so it's completely okay if the community decides. But the discussion keeps on going a bit, so if you're interested, have a look at it. Thank you.
I just really quickly wanted to bring this up with you guys because we were talking about Bytemaster and the control of this DAC, so to speak. I don't know. I know that we need to be working on getting the committee and all that stuff. What do you guys think in terms of where, at what milestone do you guys feel comfortable saying, okay, we can start bringing in, we can start kind of, I don't want to say it, backing away from Bytemaster's such a strong influence that Bytemaster has over BitShares.
This is going to be an organic process.
Do you guys have any input as far as once we reach this point, I'm more comfortable?
Yes, crypto. It is going to be an organic process. We just need to see some bodies step up to the plate so we can start vetting them and evaluating what they want to accomplish as a committee member. But I'm seeing a big vacuum here with people even willing to express a desire.
I think what I want to figure out is how to step back, because I think as long as I'm filling that volume, that power role, no one's going to step in. So to the extent that I can step back and just refuse to make decisions without actually having the appearance that I'm giving up, because I'm not giving up. I think I just need to give space to allow that to happen. So, don't feel like I don't want to stop on everyone or anyone who wants to step up. And going forward over the next couple of weeks, less and less. I'm going to make less and less decisions for BitShares. I'll still make.
You make a really point there, Bytemaster. I think you've got a very excellent point there.
Well, we also have to remember too. I mean, from a committee member standpoint, is that you're not stepping up as the sole, torchbearer. You're going to have shared responsibility with other committee members. There's a 51%, threshold. So nothing you do is going to swing things one way or another, and maybe that'll take a little of the pressure off. But ultimately it's
no one wants my job.
Yeah, yeah, right. But it's not a paid position. But I think it's very much sort of a reputation position. If you do get in there and muddle things up, you might have that might be the deterrent that some people are seeing right now. Do I have the self-confidence to go out there and make tough decisions? We all know Bytemaster's had some tough decisions to make, and I know it's not just Bytemaster there in Blacksburg that are doing these things either. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like this is going to very quickly be placed in our hands if it hasn't already, and I think it'll become apparent pretty quickly if Bytemaster starts saying, well, hey, you guys figure it out. We're here, But if you want to, which way should we go? Where do we want to go?
Maybe the first thing we should do as a community is just start nominating people that we feel personally would be useful and good quality people to have in that role. Whether they choose to accept that nomination or not, it's another. But having nominations might be a first step in my view.
That's a really good idea. Yeah. Not only that, that will give people, a lot of people might be out there thinking, oh yeah, what do people think of me? Do people think that I'm using the proverbial I? People think that, that's the reality. People might not understand, hey, people give a lot of credence to the ideas that someone has. And, if you see your name nominated up there, you think, oh, geez, people maybe, people think that I'd be good at this job. Okay, right?
It's funny you say that, because I actually have a poll. Well, not a poll, a thread on the forums asking people to compile a list of the individuals who have helped you in the past, who have been loyal to BitShares. Because what I've found through my experience, it kind of goes back to what Crypto's talking about. Oftentimes, we have less confidence in ourselves than others who are onlookers have in us. So sometimes it's a good idea for a community to identify those people and to let them know that they have been identified and they.
Could you post the location of that poll or that thread in the forum that addresses this point?